Today the topic is the making of the Constitution. The making of the Constitution is not an easy task. Before going into the details of making of the Constitution, let us discuss about what is Constitution. Constitution is a fundamental document which states all the rules and regulations of the land of a nation. Constitution is a fundamental document which states all the rules and regulations of a nation, of that particular land, of that particular region. Every nation has its own constitution. The constitutionally valid points are called like legal rights. Now, moving on to the discussion of constitution, let us analyze what are the constitutions of Nepal and Japan so that we get a clarity on what does a constitution mean to us. Let us see here, the Nepal, the neighboring nation of us. The Nepal is located on the northeastern part of India, which shares a boundary, and 5 states of India shares boundary with Nepal. Now, moving on to the Constitution of Nepal. Nepal is a nation which was ruled by monarch. They are having hereditary monarchy where the people have resorted against it, revolted against it, have done many rallies against them and gathered at many places and showed their dissatisfaction. So finally from 1951, various times the people of Nepal have showed their dissatisfaction and moved on towards against the will of the king. So finally in 2007, the interim government or the king came down to accept the constitutional setup or to give complete democracy towards the Nepal, and king becomes a nominal representative whereas the parliament becomes the supreme. So in that process of its journey, in 2007 when the parliamentary setup was formed, they came up with establishment of constitution. In the constitution, whatever we say, constitution gives us idea of 2 points. One is what are the rules and regulations that are present in that particular nation, and the second one is what are the ideals and the goals of the nation that are to be reached. Coming to the first point, what are the rules and regulations? The rules and regulations are entrusted with the responsibilities. You can get an idea about the fundamental rights, the directive principles of state policy, the powers of the Prime Minister, the powers of the President, the powers of the Legislative Assembly, the powers of the Parliament, the powers of the President, the powers of the Supreme Court, the powers of the entire members of Parliament, the powers of individual members of Parliament, the powers of the opposition leaders. All these together are entitled in the Constitution. Not only these, the constitutional limits are also entitled here, which are considered as crimes are also considered in the Constitution. This is the first point which is covered in our Constitution of any nation. Moving on to the second point, what are the goals or the ideals that is the nation going to project it towards its Constitution? For example, like equality, liberty, fraternity, these are the principles which are going to be projected in the Constitution. So, when you read a Constitution of any nation, you get the idea of the fundamental duties or the rights or whatever you get in the nation along with the goals or the ideals which the nation wants to or will or shall be in pursuing them in the further process or in the future of for their nations. In this process, Nepal achieved its independence in 2007, formed into a parliamentary system, then got converted itself into the constitutional setup. Even now, the Constitution of Nepal was in framing in the 2007 till date because the Constitution has its own loopholes in the Nepal background. We shall come back to Nepal, but before come back to Nepal, we will discuss about Japan. Japan was a nation which got the parliamentary setup in 1946 after the Second World War came to end and Japan was defeated in the hands of the Allied powers. Finally, they dropped the king's autonomy and monarchy was given up and we got the presidential parliamentary system, not the presidential system. Now moving on to the parliamentary system, king is present even today also, but the king powers are just a nominal representation just like the Britain Queen. Now the powers are vested with the Prime Minister of the Japan. So they are also having the prime ministerial government. Now what is the Constitution of Japan mean for us? The Japanese Constitution also clearly states the same ideology of what the other constitutions frame for us. Generally the basic rules of the Constitution of Japan are like all are treated equally, everybody is given the equal opportunity to entertain and to progress in their future, and they also clearly specify that all the resources of the nation of Japan have to be utilized properly. All the people's efforts should be utilized properly, and they have to respect the interest of the other nations. The Japanese also expressed the view in their constitution that the government is a sacred trust given or by the people towards its representatives. The power of the government is nothing but the people have bestowed some power in the representatives, and the representatives in the interest of the larger community act only on behalf of the people. So they have to be firm in their actions, and there should be in their mindset that they are going to do a larger benefit for their people. That is a clear idea of what the Japanese constitution gives us in the picture of first point. Moving on to the second point, they also respect all the other nations as they respect their own nations, and they also made a statement in their constitution that they will try to respect their nations as well as they will ask the other nations also to respect their principles. In the wake of these two world wars, where the other interests of the nations were not respected properly, where the Germans were not interested properly in the World War I defeat, Treaty of Versailles, so Japanese government made a clear statement that we have to respect the ideals of the other nation as we respect our nation's ideals. So in this point of time, we can come to the clarity that as per the experiences, as per the leaders' wish and the intention of that moment of time, we get the ideals got struck into the constitution, which can be further be amended, but most of the times the basic structure of the constitution will not be amended. So now coming back to Nepal, what made the Nepal till now not to yet to form a constitution? Even if Japanese people can form it by 1946, and now from 2007 the Nepal people are trying to form a government. They already formed the government. Now they are going to write a constitution, to draft a constitution. The world's largest constitution in the entire world or in the entire globe, the bulkiest constitution is the Indian constitution, which was written in just 3 years. So what made the Nepal people to wait so long? From 2007, it's 2014 now running, and even then they are falling short of making a constitution for themselves. And even in Nepal, we don't have much diversity as we have in our nation. So what is the point that is binding them or not making them to move on to form a separate constitution for them, or what are the principles they are going to struck up here? Because we'll discuss about that. Now moving on to the background of Nepal. What happened in Nepal exactly? To understand the Nepal's constitutional background, we have to understand what is happening in Nepal clearly. So in Nepal in 1959, we got a revolt. The people started to revolt against the king. The king name is King Mahendra. King Mahendra agreed to give the parliamentary setup and restrict himself to a constitutional monarch. So when he agreed in this point of time, the elections were conducted and the process was going on, but the constitution was not framed yet, and it is just for a namesake government is being run. Finally, up to 1991, the say was as usual going on, and the king was using his entire powers. Only for namesake we have the constitutional setup. So finally in 1991, we got elections for the parliament, and the Congress, the Nepal Congress Party. The Nepal Congress Party has won the elections with a huge majority and took over the government's responsibilities. Now after taking over the responsibilities, the Communist Party people are not satisfied with the Congress government. What made them to not get satisfied is that even today, even the Congress Party is having majority in the parliament, but the word of the king is final. They are not utilizing their powers very clearly. This way it went on up to 2007. Finally in 2007, the Communist Party people agitated and gathered in groups in the mass gathered and revolted against the Congress government, and then in the next elections the Communist Party of China won the Communist Party of Nepal won the elections and formed the government. Mr. Koirala became the Prime Minister of the Nepal nation. Now what is the question that is binding them to make a constitution? They can make a constitution from 1959 to 1991 or from 1991 to 2007. So in this long span of period, when they were running along with the nation or a systematic form of governments, what are the features that are binding them not to make a government is that when they were framing the form of governments or the constitutional setups, when they are framing a draft of a constitution, they are framing according to the interests of the nations or interests of the leaders. The point is to be remembered is that the interest of the people is the main criteria, and the future generations of the people also should feel comfortable with the draft of the constitution what we are making on. So the leaders has to keep in their mind that they have the responsibility of the future generations and to take forward the nation in the further steps. So the people did not concentrate much on this. So the constitutions were failing in the Nepal. Finally, now in 2007, after the Communist Party came into power, they started to frame a constitution. Now what is a constitution? The constitutional experts clearly states that the constitution provides us two basic ideas. The first basic idea is that it provides clearly all the duties and responsibilities of the top executives of the nation, as well as the members of the parliament, as well as the citizens, the fundamental rights, the cabinets, duties and responsibilities, everything in detail with the single note of duties and responsibilities. At the same time, how to build on a nation with the perfect guidelines are also be entrusted in a constitution. Now moving on to the Nepal's issue, what is binding it from making a constitution from 2007 till date is that the Nepal leaders are still in a confucius state whether they are going to frame it on the interest of the people or at the cost of their own political careers. So here we have to remember the point that the leaders don't have the clarity or could not get up the perfect picture on what would be the future of the Nepal. This is the main reason why the Nepal is not able to form a constitution of itself. So when could Nepal get a clear idea of all these things? We have to wait and watch till they get their clear picture. Then only they can draft a perfect constitution for them. Now moving back to India, what was the basic criteria for Indians to frame a constitution? Who led the Indian members or the leaders to frame a constitution? What are the basic criteria that were meted out by the Indian leaders to frame a constitution? Exactly how many days it took for the Indians to frame a constitution? How did the people express their dissatisfaction? Is the assembly having complete representation of all the people? These all points we will discuss in this next part.